Mm, Cool. Let's get into it. In case people start joining, put this here. Cool. All right. High reps versus low reps. Should you lift heavy? Should you lift light? When to use each for max gains? Why? All the benefits, the pros, the cons of it. Let's dive in. What's the difference? All right, so high rep, we're going to talk about high rep as, let's say, 15 to 30 plus reps per set, lighter weight, more repetitions. Low rep, let's say 1 to 6 rep range per set, heavier, less reps. And then there's a moderate rep range. Let's call it the 6 to 15. Some might say 6 to 12. I like 6 to 15. That's the middle ground, a little bit of the sweet spot. And but most importantly, when it comes to building muscle, it comes down to mechanical tension, fatiguing your muscle fibers, and progressively overloading, right? More reps, weight sets, not the exact rep range. The exact rep range is not what's most important for building muscle, but we're talking about the pros, the cons of all of it. Each rep range, right, has its own purpose. Choosing the right one depends on your goals, right? Are we focusing on adding strength, power, focusing on adding muscle, endurance, or a mix? So it all depends. It all depends. Talk about low rep, 1 to 6 reps per set. Pros. This is better for overall strength and power, right? If you're like a power lifter, you're trying to lift as much weight as possible. It makes more sense to lift in this 1 to 6 rep range. This is maximizing the strength gains, lifting those heavier loads. It increases neurological efficiency, right? Your motor neurons fire, improves max strength overall, right? Again, powerlifters, athletes, they want to lift more so in the 1 to 6 rep range. That muscle fiber recruitment, right? It increases your muscle fiber recruitment. So all your fibers have to work together to fire and be as efficient as possible to lift as much weight as possible. So it's a skill. Your body learns to fire all its neurons at the same time to lift as much weight as possible. That's why people talk about strength being more of a skill than it is just like muscle growth. Cool. And then time efficient, right? Fewer reps means your sets are quicker, get in, get out of the gym a little bit faster. And again, if we're talking about muscle growth, from a muscle growth standpoint, it's a lot easier to tell when you hit failure when you're lifting heavy versus high rep, which I'll get into. Cons, more fatigue on the central nervous system, right? This is from starts from the brain, essentially, your entire central nervous system, different ways um, that you can get fatigued mentally, physically, all that's linked through your central nervous system, so it's called. And heavy lifting requires just longer recovery times. Again, another con, less time under tension, not ideal for hypertrophy because muscles aren't under strain long enough. They're not getting that fatigued, really. If you do like sets, you can grow muscle from doing sets of three, but that just means you have to do more sets of three, right? Instead of like 3 sets of 10, you might have to do like 10 sets of three to equate for the total time under tension. And then another con, obviously, higher risk of injury if form breaks down, right? If your form's a little bit sloppy, going heavy, you're more likely, or the chance of getting injured is a little bit higher. Lifting near max loads with bad technique, right, increases your injury risk. And again, very hard to recover. The joints take a beating when you're lifting heavy, especially if you have bad form, right? Things like dive bombing in and out, like of a shoulder press or a squat, your joints take a toll, right? Your joints take that beating. It's con. High reps, 15 to 30 and beyond. Pros, increase blood flow and pump. The higher reps lead to more metabolic stress and increases the muscle swelling, right? The sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. When the muscle swells and as a result of it swelling, there's potential like growth there. There's more and more studies, more and more research going on about it, but there's a recent study on it, the burn relating to growth from because it activates what's called mTOR, which kind of works as like a think of like a construction manager telling them, I'm doing video on this, telling the construction manager telling the workers to actually build muscle. That's what mTOR does. It's a mechanism to trigger muscle growth, and there's studies showing that that burn, that lactic acid, could potentially lead to some of that. Still studied, but it's interesting. That's why the burn could be beneficial. Lower strength, lower joint stress. So lighter weights reduces strain on the joints, making it safer, right? If we're talking about progress, talking about overall growth, it's all about consistency over time, right? Be good at anything, you got to be consistent over a long period of time. And if we're available for longer, because we're going a little bit lighter, we're a little bit easier on the joints, you're less likely to get hurt, and therefore you're gonna be more consistent over time and see better results. Better for muscular endurance. Going higher in reps, lighter weight does improve your stamina and just like your ability to go for longer, pretty much lift for longer, be able to handle a lot of that fatigue over time. And then more time under tension and high volumes, right? That comes down to when it comes to muscle growth, tension and volume, right? Doing a lot of sets is kind of one of the most important factors when it comes to muscle growth, and high reps allows for higher volumes. Cons, less effective for max strength, right? Lighter weights don't optimally recruit the high threshold motor units I talked about with that the higher weight does, or the heavyweight doesn't recruit those fibers as well. And then higher fatigue from burnout, right? That lactic acid builds up, causes that burn, which can limit performance before muscles are fully worked, right? And that goes down to hard to tell when you really hit failure, right? You're doing a set and it's burning, but like your muscle could probably keep going. You're not at failure, but you stop because of the burn. It's one of the cons. And then takes longer to do more reps, right? That means longer sets. It means more time potentially in the gym. That's a con. That's a con. The moderate rep range, a 6 to 15. This is kind of the sweet spot. I like this rep range a lot. It balances that high mechanical tension, that little bit of the heavier load gives you, the heavier weight gives you. Also closer to that 15 reps, that metabolic stress, that pump you can still get, and you still get that muscle fiber recruitment. So this nice little sweet spot, like a 6 to 15, does all of that pretty much, and allows for progressive overload without that excessive joint strain of going too heavy. And you could still add a rep each week going from like 6 to 15. It allows for that. It's a little bit easier to do so versus like if you're in the 1 to 6 rep range, a little bit harder to add a rep at the same weight each week. Key exercises for this rep range, pretty much most compound exercises and isolation lifts, right? Pretty much all the exercises you can lift in the 6 to 15 rep range. All right, what's the best approach? So, some muscle fibers in your guys' body are slow twitch, which means they contract slowly but resist well. Think of them like the endurance fibers. They're good to go longer for longer. And there's some fast twitch. These contract quickly, but they fatigue faster. These are sprinter fiber types. The more slow twitch fibers you can think of like as your calves or your postural muscles, like the muscles that keep you kind of upright in your posture, lower back, core, neck, shoulders, the calves, because you're accustomed to walking all day, right? They got to be a little bit slower. They got to be able to go a little bit longer. Muscles more with fast switch tend to be quads, your glutes and hamstrings, your pecs and triceps. Those are more the fast twitch sprinter muscle fibers. So for the slow twitch muscle fibers, those tend to respond, react, grow better to higher rep ranges, and the fast twitch tend to react, grow better with a little bit of the lower rep range. Genetics do play a role, though, in determining if someone has more slow twitch or fast twitch. We're not all created equal. Some people are mostly slow twitch, some are mostly fast twitch. So actually, like if you're naturally a good athlete, like you can run well, jump, all those sorts of things, that probably means you're genetically more fast twitch versus like you're good at running long distance since birth, right? That you're probably more slow twitch. Using all rep ranges allows for a balance of strength, size, and endurance, right? So we want variation, we want variety in our training. Some exercises lift a bit heavier, like a bench press or a squat. Some others more light, like a lateral raise, a calf raise. So mixing it up is generally a good idea. And having some blocks of training, right? Like let's say 4 weeks of this, 8 weeks of 4 weeks of light, 8 weeks of heavy, vice versa. Mixing that up is generally a good idea, unless we have limitations where we can't go heavy or something like that. Um, Ultimately, mix it up, see what works best for you. How do you know what works best for you? Which rep range do you feel like you're growing the most? Which like what when you're working in the 5 to 10 rep range, do you feel like you're progressing well? You're seeing better changes in the mirror? Are you constantly adding more? Is it easier to add more reps, more weight each week? Pretty much what it comes down to in terms of like, well, are you fast twitch or slow twitch? Also, it, if you are more of a grinder when it comes to your reps, what do I mean by that? So like let's say you're bench pressing, right? You're bench pressing and then you're at like 10 reps, like everything's going smooth, the pace is all good, consistent. You get to like let's say 11 reps, boom, you hit a wall all of a sudden and you're done. You can't do any more. That's more fast twitch versus if you get to 10 and you're still able to slowly grind through like another 2, 3, 4 reps, you're mostly slow twitch. That's usually a good indicator to kind of tell which one you're mostly. Like for me, bench, I'm every rep up to 6 is like everything's smooth, everything's smooth. I get to 7, I'm like, boop, hit a wall. Can't really do much more. Maybe finish that rep. Can't do more. Cool. Questions and hopefully motherfucking answers. I think Jen's got her hand raised. Jen, what's up?
You said genetics play a big role in whether you're predominantly fast twitch or slow twitch, but is that the only role or can you manipulate over time? Like when I started doing power yoga 10 years ago, my body changed a lot. So does the physical activity affect your composition or is it just genetically influenced?
Genetics is still gonna play a role in it. Like you can definitely change your style of training to like activate your fast twitch fibers better, but you can't like change the genetic composition of your fiber types. Like
Okay.
if you're someone that's naturally slow twitch, it's just gonna be harder for you to become more fast twitch. But like you can get those fast twitch to work better and stronger and fire faster and better. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yes.
Cool.
Thanks.
Good question. Cool. No other questions. Beautiful. Did we learn? Did we learn today? Based on our workouts, can you tell if we are fast twitch or slow twitch? Uh, yes, on your workout performance, if we're not able to progress at a good rate on a lift when we're in a certain rep range, but like all the other rep ranges, you are progressing well. That would tell me on like that exercise, that muscle group, maybe you're a little bit slow twitch or maybe a little bit fast twitch. We could think about switching things up there. But for the most part, I throw a lot of variety for you guys. On some days, it might be a little bit heavier for the shoulders. Some might be a little bit lighter. Some weeks, like if I do first 8 weeks, it might be lighter. Next 8 weeks might be heavier. I like to throw variety in there, but you guys could tell that I do like the 6 to 15 because it tries to cover all your bases pretty much. We get kind of best of all worlds. If we're gonna start with a certain rep range, it'd be kind of that 6 to 15 because 99% of you guys are all looking to lose fat, add muscle, right? Body composition. Very few are like, I want to bench 900 pounds. Not a lot of people are like that. So cool. No other questions. All right. If questions come up as you're digesting or on replay, you shoot me a message.
Okay, let's try the first one.
Let me know how the first one goes, Vitaly.
Will do.
Cool. All right, guys. If questions come up, shoot me a message and should be good to go. It's motherfucking Friday. Have the best day of your entire life and weekend. Talk more soon. Peace out.